Welcome to Wade 2025 on Cwu-TV on YouTube and Cwu-TV Network on Facebook. Leave your comments, like, share, and subscribe to our channels. Well, folks, we're back. This is your host, Kim Wade, and I want to touch on something that people have asked from the previous shows. Kim, were you to be mayor, what will be your policies? What's going to undergird what you're trying to do? What are you trying to do? Well, hopefully in 10 minutes here, I can tell you exactly that. All the policies, laws, ordinances, practices promoted by the mayor, a mayor, or me as mayor, or the council should always be preceded by these two questions. What's good for kids and what's good for property values? I believe that if you look out for what's good for kids and every decision you make is driven by that, you'll be looking out for the future. And when you're looking out for the future, you're making decisions that are not wasteful. It's not poor stewardship of the resources and assets that would be used going into those decisions. So we're just asking you that you consider this here. If we look out what's good for kids and what's good for property values, we're going to be able to sustain this city's infrastructure, its educational system, and deal with the crime that is running rampant in the city of Jackson. It is not rocket science on how to deal with this here. What it's going to require is for us to be more mindful of the fact that it is not about us being the older ones who are on the stage of life, those who are in the leadership's position. Everything we have to do has to be based on what's good for kids. And the example of that, look at your own life. What your parents did every day, getting up every morning, putting one foot in front of the other, putting on those domestic uniforms or those blue uniforms to go work in the factories, in the fields, etc. They did it for you. They did it for me. And we are failing to do that for our kids. The jobs that we go to every day, it's all about enhancing our resume and making ourselves look good, making us shine and floss in the eyes of others. I'm asking, and I intend to, if the Lord says the same, we're able to make some changes in this city via the election process, is to encourage people to be more mindful of these two things, of what's best for the kids and what's good for property values. Because we haven't always been in this position here in the city of Jackson that we find ourselves. It's only because, in my estimation, too many people have taken their hands off the plow. And that line and that row is not straight anymore. And we can get back to what, it's not like we don't know how to do it or we've never seen it done before. So that's where we're going back to. So let's talk about what's good for kids. I mentioned briefly in some of the other shows that education is going to be the cornerstone of what's going to be good for the future. And here's how we're going to do that. One of the bedrock things I can suggest is that we need to give control back to the school system on the local level, and more specifically, back to the classroom teacher. That teacher needs to have absolute control of who gets to come and go, the discipline that will go forward in that classroom. I'm not saying the teacher gets to get the beat on students. No. What I'm saying is if a child is disruptive, then that teacher needs to be able to say, hey, you're out of here, and let the administrators deal with that. Now, that's why they got to the positions that they are presently in. They rose to that level because of their acumen and their ability to get things done. Well, they got something else on their list now. Get this unruly child in line. Now, that child can come back to the classroom if that child brings their parents with them and the parents sit there with them, or Jesus Christ comes and sign them in. Other than that, that teacher has absolute control who gets in that classroom. Now, if you do that, and we start getting, as I said before, fewer juvenile delinquents coming out of our classrooms and coming out of our schools, that will be less troubled adults in our streets, in our prisons, causing and clogging up our judicial system. There is a method to the madness, but we can't continue on the way we're doing it. And this is why it's important that we sit back and realize that it is us. It's not racism, it's not the legislature, it's not anyone other than the fact that we need to get control of the plow. The mule is just running amok, and we've got to do that. We can do that, we will do that. Now, the other thing is, now as simplistic as that sounds about the school system, actually it is. Oh, I know there are those of you who want to talk about the money equation and we don't get enough money and charter schools are bleeding off. Well, the charter schools and all these other things arose because, again, we took our hands off the plow. And we don't need to do that. We don't need to keep doing this. And again, it's really disappointing that we have to convince you, those of you on the stage of life right now who call yourselves leaders, who are regulators and administrators, etc., that we have to sell this to you when we're paying you to do these things anyway. So I would hope that you would relent and sit down, let us come and reason together on how we can make these things better. But we've got to get these graduation rates up. The other thing, property values. We have to do a better job of keeping our city clean. It's not like this in every area of the state. It's not like this in every other black community. For whatever reason, we've got a generation or two of Jacksonians who feel like it's okay to be trashy, throw trash out, excuse me, throw trash out from their fast food bags and all that kind of stuff, mattresses. No, what we need to do is be more mindful. I suggested to the mayor that they put trail cameras up and down these places where they're dumping this stuff and catch the license plates and have that information being transmitted to our jails. In other words, we'll have cameras right in front of these prisoners' jails, and they're sitting there all day anyway. Just watch that camera. And if they see somebody come by there and dump off a truckload of trash, get their license plate numbers, that prisoner will get some money put on their books. We got cameras for everything else. We got all these cameras supposedly to catch crime, and we got more crime than we ever had. No, let's reposition some of these cameras and put them out there where we can get a better quality of life. The other thing that I suggest, and I would suggest to the council that we do, look, we may as well write into the contract with the waste management or whoever has the contract to pick up garbage, y'all pick up whatever they set out at the curb. Because in our community, until we get it clear to our young people and whoever else is throwing out all this trash, we don't want you doing that, don't do that, stop doing that, then we need to pick up whatever's out there. We can't have it where people find it more easier just to dump it on the side of the road rather than leave it there at the curb where waste management can come pick it up. Again, these things are doable. It's something that we need to do. It just happens to be unique to Jackson or the black community at this juncture in time. But the next generation should be of the mindset that we don't litter. And again, it sounds trite, but these are quality of life issues. This is all about attitude. And the same thing goes, if we were to do these two things, in my view, if we were to, all the policies, laws, ordinances, practices of the mayor and the city council put forward on behalf of the citizens of Jackson is geared toward what's good for kids and what's good for property values, guess what's going to happen? We're going to see property values increase, revenues come into the city, and then we can deal with the crime and the infrastructure with our tax dollars when we have money to employ and deploy towards ending, limiting or hiring enough police officers and trying to get a handle on the crime that's going forward. It's not rocket science. And plus, we'll be able to fund the infrastructure repair that's needed in the city of Jackson without having to go with a beggar's cup to the state legislature, to the federal government, everyone else. Now, there's nothing wrong with pursuing those grants, et cetera, from the other sources, but we should be our first responders. We need to be men and women who have enough pride that we don't go out begging for everything that we need when we can be doing it ourselves. Besides, we need to do it anyway. We need a tax base. We need those fine restaurants that we can eat here in the city of Jackson without having to go to Flowood or Madison or Richland or whatever, Pearl. The bottom line is nothing wrong with going to those places. Go where your money will take you. Let your dollars be the vote. But at the same time, why can't we get that? It's only because we got a group of blacks, many of them in my same age group, who don't want to leave the stage of life. They don't want to adjust. They don't want to change. All they want to do is get paid. You got no problem with folks getting their money. I want mine. But it's time for us to make some adjustments. It's time for us to make some changes. And in 2025, you're going to have that opportunity to do just that. So I'm just asking you to consider that anything we do going forward as a city, let it be based on what's good for kids, what's good for property values, and that's going to create the tax revenues we need, because the property values rise. It means we're going to have more rooftops, we're going to have more citizens paying taxes, we're going to have more citizens spending money. It's not rocket science, it's a matter of will. The question is, will you take the challenge? Will you listen to what's the new ideas being brought? Thank you. We're going to see you on the next go. Remember, Cwu-TV on YouTube.